Excision file number, Gazette are some of the terminology that you're going to come across quite a lot in Nigerian real estate. And today we'll discuss what they mean. In order to understand excision, you must first of all understand that every land in the country belongs to the government under what we call global acquisition, and it is backed by the 1978 Land Use Act, which means in 1978 there was a decree by the government which is known as the 1978 Land Use Act, which states that all land in the country belongs to the government, and then the governor of the state is the sole custodian, the sole administrator of all the land in that state. So, the 1978 Land Use Act is what gives the government exclusive right to obtain a land for public use. Now, that's the only condition by which the government can obtain a person's land or a community's land. It has to be for public use, for public good, and not for any private purpose. So, from the very inception, lands in Nigeria are owned by a family, that is, lands that have been passed down from generations, or is owned by a community, and that is usually people who emigrated from a different place and have come to dwell and establish in another place. So they naturalize there, they populate there, and they are generally known as the owner of the land. But by virtue of the 1978 Land Use Act, all land now belongs to the government, but there's something we call excision, and it's a process of the government giving back land, a portion of it, back to its original owner. That is, it could be a family or it could be a community. So to get an excision, what the family or the community will do is apply to the government for an excision. And when the excision is approved, the government will decide how many plots of land or how many acres they want to give back to the community for dwelling, for agriculture, or to even sell. For example, if a community or a family has like 200 acres, the government might decide to excise or to give back 120 acres and keep 80 acres. So when the family or community apply for an excision and the excision is under processing, then the government will issue what you call an excision file number. And what that simply means is that the government is currently working on that excision application, but does not mean that the government has approved the excision yet. So why this needs to be clear is that some sellers might want to sell the land and tell you that the land has an excision file number. That does not mean excision on that land has been granted. And an excision file number is not a land title document, because the government can decide to either grant an excision or not to grant an excision. But what is a land title, however, in this situation is a gazette, and a gazette is usually issued when an excision application has been finalized and approved by the government. So the gazette is like a journal or a publication that details which parts of the land that the government has released back to the community and which parts of that land that the government is keeping or retaining for itself. The gazette is going to carry the name of the family that the government has given back that land, and as well as the correct address and location. This is because as a buyer, when you want to buy a land that has a gazette, you can check the gazette to ensure that the gazette is carrying the correct names of the family that you want to transact with, as well as the correct address of the land that you wish to buy. So if you buy a land that has an excision file number, it's a 50-50 chance you are taking, because the excision can be granted or not granted by the government. But when you buy a land that has a gazette, it's a secure land, and after you get your deed of assignment from the seller, you can go ahead to apply for your C of O on that land. So, if you've learned something new today, stay tuned for more educative real estate videos.